You're nothing but trouble from the projects. Look at me when I sentence you, Judge William Whitaker barks, voice cracking like a whip. The gavel slams as 19-year-old Maya Brooks stiffens before him. Snickers ripple through the mostly white gallery. Whitaker steps down, invading her space. He yanks her case file from the table and lets pages flutter to the floor like confetti. Pick it up, he snarls. Maya kneels, gathering scattered papers, clutching her spiral notebook to her chest like armor. Pick them up now. His polished shoe taps impatiently as Maya scoops the last sheet. Her public defender, Mr. Keene, stares at nothing in particular, jaw tight but silent. Remember your place, Whitaker sneers, striding back to the bench with theatrical disdain. Maya's jaw hardens. She tightens her grip on the battered notebook, her quiet lifeline. She doesn't look up, not yet, not until the tremor in her hand steadies and the burn of humiliation dulls into a cold, careful focus. The notebook in those trembling hands holds what could end Whitaker's career before sundown. Dawn had broken pale over the county courthouse, casting long pencils of light on cracked steps. Maya buttoned her neat blue blouse, the best she owned. Her father, Anthony Brooks, walked beside her in a pressed maintenance uniform. Missing shifts meant missing rent, but a private attorney was impossible. Remember what I told you, he murmured. Stand straight. Speak clearly. Look them in the eye, no matter how they look at you. Maya nodded, clutching the notebook. Inside, margins were packed with dates, quotes, tallies, careful annotations she'd compiled for weeks. Keene finally found them in the hallway, riffling an overstuffed file until he fished out her paperwork. Brooks. Maya Brooks. Right. The hotel trespass, he said, barely glancing up. Judge Whitaker's calendar today. Look, you should take the plea. First offense. Well, technically second if we count that park incident. I wasn't, Maya started. Keene cut her off. He's hard on people like you. Take community service. Across town, Judge Whitaker adjusted a silk tie in the mirror of his Cedar Ridge mansion. His wife set coffee just where he liked it, not a drop out of place. Juvenile calendar today, he muttered, checking his Rolex. Delinquents, clogging the docket. There's one about trespassing at the Grand Hotel. He speed dialed. Colin! About that trespasser at your property. Don't worry, I'll make an example. Can't have folks wandering into places they don't belong. He smiled at his reflection, satisfied with the symmetry of power. Back at the courthouse, Maya sat quietly, studying the rhythms in the room. A white teen caught shoplifting, got a lecture, and 20 hours of service, another charged with vandalism, had his fine trimmed after his father whispered at the rail. Then a black teen appeared for loitering. Whitaker's tone chilled, posture hardening. Maximum service, steep fine. Maya's pen moved, names, charges, outcomes, recording disparities like a metronome. When the bailiff called, Brooks Maya, a sharp-eyed woman in the back row, leaned forward, gaze locked on the judge. Maya walked to the defense table, each step deliberate. Whitaker barely glanced up, frown carving into his face. Another trespass case? He sighed theatrically. Epidemic of kids thinking they can be wherever they please. Mr. Keene cleared his throat. Your Honor, my client is a first-time offender in this context. We're prepared to discuss a reasonable penalty. Second offense, Whitaker cut in, tapping a folder. I see a prior incident at Riverside Park after hours. I was studying, Maya said softly. Lights went out at home. Park benches have street lamps. Whitaker's brows rose. Did I ask you to speak? Mr. Keene, control your client. The prosecutor stood, smoothing his tie. Your Honor, the defendant was found in a restricted wing of the Grand Hotel, near executive conference rooms where valuable equipment is stored. Security video confirms she had no legitimate business there. What do you say for yourself? Whitaker leaned forward, finally addressing Maya. I was there for a program, she began. A program? He scoffed, eyes sliding over her modest clothes, doubt sharpened to insult. The Grand Hotel doesn't run programs for... He halted, the implication lingering, souring the air. Your Honor, Keene tried again, perhaps a fine and standard service would... Mr. Keene, This court takes trespass at upscale establishments seriously, Whitaker snapped. It starts with trespass, ends with theft. The defendant shows a pattern of being where she doesn't belong. Anthony Brooks shifted in the gallery, knuckles bone white. A court officer stepped closer, eyes warning. Maya kept writing, pen steady, documenting his words like evidence slides. Whitaker noticed the motion. "What are you writing?" he demanded. "Notes, Your Honor," she answered, startled but composed. "Hand them over. This is my courtroom, not your classroom." She hesitated, then passed the notebook through the bailiff. Whitaker flipped pages, irritation flaring, and then stalling. There were tidy charts, dates, verbatim quotes, columns of numbers. His mouth tightened. The mask quickly returned. He snapped it shut and tossed it back with performative disdain. "Quite the little researcher. Notes won't change the facts of your case." He leaned back, fingertips steepled. "I find standard service insufficient. Ms. Brooks has an attitude problem that needs correction." Keene inhaled to object, but Whitaker lifted a hand. "Stand, Miss Brooks, center of the courtroom." Maya rose, moving through cold marble space under 100 watching eyes. "Now explain to everyone why you thought you belonged in a five-star hotel like the Grand. What possible legitimate reason?" "I was invited to—" "Speak up," he barked. "The reporter can't record mumbling." Her throat tightened, but she lifted her chin. "I was invited to participate in a program." "A program," Whitaker repeated, savoring each syllable. "And who invited you to this mysterious program? The National Merit Scholarship?" He laughed sharply, cutting her off. "The National Merit Scholarship Program doesn't meet in hotel ballrooms. They use schools, universities." He turned to the gallery. "Creative. I'll give her that." Whispered judgments rippled. Maya stood very still, face a careful mask. "Turn around, Ms. Brooks. Let everyone see your idea of appropriate courtroom attire." She hesitated. "Not a suggestion." She pivoted slowly, simple blue blouse, and dark skirt neat and clean, if not expensive. "Your Honor," Keene finally said, "this is highly irregular and potentially—" "Mr. Keene, are you questioning my methods?" Whitaker's voice dropped to a dangerous purr. "I can hold you in contempt as easily as your client." Keene folded instantly. Whitaker lifted his phone. "I have Colin Mercer, owner of the Grand, on the line. Mr. Mercer, any educational program scheduled Tuesday afternoon?" A tinny speaker voice replied, "Absolutely not. Our center is for business clients. Security reported the young woman near our Platinum Suite, where we keep valuable equipment." Through it all, the woman in the back row kept observing, tablet now recording every word. Two well-dressed colleagues slid in beside her, murmuring. Maya stood alone in the center, back unbowed, despite the sting of public shame. A single tear gathered at the corner of her eye, but she blinked it away. "Thank you, Mr. Mercer," Whitaker concluded smoothly. "The court appreciates your time." He faced Maya again. "Still claim you were there for a program?" "Yes, Your Honor," she answered, voice steadier now, defiance smoldering into resolve. "Defiant to the end," he muttered. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't move. The screen lit, then went dark. "Hold steady. Help is on the way. You're not alone. Court will recess 15 minutes, Whitaker announced abruptly. "Ms. Brooks, don't leave the building. We're not finished." "All rise," the bailiff called as he stalked out. The room erupted in whispers. Maya returned to the table, face composed, spine braced against the aftershocks. "I need the restroom," she whispered to her father. Anthony nodded, pride and worry wrestling across his features. "You're handling this with more strength than I ever could, kiddo. I'm proud of you." Maya slipped into the tiled quiet of the bathroom and finally let the pressure crack. Silent tears, white-knuckled grip on the sink. She splashed cold water, erasing the evidence. The door creaked open. She straightened, swallowing the ache. A black woman in her 40s stepped in, charcoal suit immaculate, gaze intentional. "Maya Brooks?" the woman asked, voice low and steady. Maya stiffened. "Yes." "Dr. Naomi Pierce, education director for the National Merit Scholarship Program. She extended a card embossed with the organization's seal. I believe we had an appointment at the Grand Hotel. Interrupted. Recognition flared across Maya's face. Dr. Pierce, but the owner said, Your Colin Mercer doesn't personally manage conference bookings, Pierce explained. Our event was arranged through corporate, not the local manager. We reserve the same space quarterly as part of their diversity initiative. I should apologize for not intervening sooner, she said, leaning against the counter, eyes flashing with anger. She kept contained. When you didn't arrive, we looked into it. What I saw today is disturbing, sadly, not surprising. Pierce nodded at Maya's notebook. Your documentation caught our attention. We've received similar reports about this courtroom for months. Meanwhile, in chambers, Whitaker loosened his tie and answered his private line. Bill, it's Senator Dwyer. Heads up. Judicial review appointments are next month. Talk about diversity on the bench. Whitaker laughed. Political theater. Don't worry about me. It's 20 years and no one's overturned my rulings. Tread carefully anyway, Dwyer warned. Whitaker smirked. I'm handling one of those cases now. Another kid who needs a lesson about private property, making an example as we speak. Back in the bathroom, Pierce made rapid calls, first to the hotel's corporate office, confirming the booking, then to the State Judicial Review Board. Yes, it's happening exactly as reported, she said. We're watching it unfold, understood. Everything's being recorded. Her last call was to a senior partner at Marshall and Reed, Thomas Naomi Pierce. We need that pro bono help we discussed, today, right now. She turned to Maya. We've been building a case against Whitaker for months. Your meticulous notes mapped the pattern we needed, but we required direct documentation. The door opened again. Anthony stepped in, cautious. Maya, you okay? Pierce introduced herself swiftly, outlining the situation. Mr. Brooks, your daughter had a legitimate interview. Whitaker's conduct fits a documented pattern of discriminatory behavior from the bench. Anthony's confusion sharpened into resolve. What do we do? Return to that courtroom, Pierce said. Maya must stay composed, whatever he throws. The truth is coming. Timing matters. Maya breathed deep. I can do it. As they turned to leave, Maya noticed the lanyard on Pierce's colleague who had just arrived, an insignia reading State Ethics Commission, Special Investigation Unit. The woman met Maya's eyes and tapped her tablet deliberately. Every word, every gesture in that courtroom would now be preserved. The hallway hummed like a live wire. Court resumed with a crack of Whitaker's gavel. His mood had curdled during recess, jaw set, eyes narrowed, as Maya returned to the defense table. After consideration, he said without preface, I've determined an appropriate penalty for Ms. Brooks's offense and continued dishonesty. Papers rustled. Pure theater. The defendant will write a public apology for the county paper, admitting trespass and lies before this court. A shocked ripple moved through the gallery at the cruelty disguised as order. Whitaker wasn't finished. He tasted the moment. Additionally, he said, satisfied, 200 hours of community service, performed at the Grand Hotel itself. Perhaps cleaning bathrooms will teach respect for private property more effectively than empty words. Keene shifted miserably. Your Honor, that seems excessive for a second offense, Whitaker snapped. Given the defendant's attitude, entirely appropriate. Do you wish to object formally, Mr. Keene? Risk a contempt citation? Keene deflated. No, Your Honor, very well. Objection. The word rang like a bell from the back of the room. A tall man in an immaculate suit strode forward. Avery Cole, Your Honor, Marshall, and Reed. I'm taking over Ms. Brooks's defense effective immediately. Color rose in Whitaker's face. Highly irregular, Mr. Cole. We're mid-sentencing. Precisely why I'm intervening, Cole said calmly, sliding credentials to the clerk. My motion to substitute counsel is already filed. No formal sentence has entered the record, so we're well within bounds. Whitaker scanned for a reason to refuse, found none, and nodded curtly. Mr. Keene, you're excused. Keene collected his things, relief obvious as he retreated. Cole didn't waste a heartbeat. Your Honor, The defense moves to dismiss all charges for lack of evidence and improper procedure. Denied, Whitaker snapped. Then why is Ms. Brooks receiving such unusual treatment compared to similar cases heard moments ago? Cole asked, voice velvet over steel. Whitaker's knuckles whitened around the gavel. Each case is unique, counselor. Indeed, Cole said, lifting a folder. I reviewed 6 months of your records. There's a statistical anomaly tied to defendant characteristics. Are you accusing this court of impropriety, Mr. Cole? Whitaker's voice sharpens. I'm entering facts into the record, Cole replies. More observers slip in, some taking notes, others fixing on Whitaker's temper. I'll hold you in contempt, Whitaker threatens. Your Honor, please note your hostility toward legitimate inquiry, Cole says evenly. Would you explain why the defendant's stated reason for being at the hotel wasn't verified before these proceedings began? One phone call would have sufficed, and you know it. A hush settles, the sort of pause that tastes like metal. Whitaker straightens, jaw grinding. The room goes still, anticipation electric. The owner of the Grand confirmed no such program, he declares. His word is sufficient for this court. Is it, though? Cole lifts a document. Evidence from the Grand's corporate events office confirms the National Merit Scholarship Program reserved the Oakwood Room from 2 to 5 on the date in question. He approaches the bench. Whitaker scans the letterhead, eyes tightening. Furthermore, Miss Brooks attended by specific invitation. Cole produces a printout. Here is the email from Dr. Naomi Pierce, Education Director. The prosecutor rises hesitantly. Your Honor, the state wasn't provided this evidence? Because no one investigated, Cole answers. The defense shouldn't have to prove innocence when the prosecution hasn't established guilt. Whitaker's phone rings. He answers on speaker, clinging to authority. Mr. Mercer, were you aware of any national merit event last Tuesday? Mercer's voice sounds less certain now, words slow, careful, wary of being caught in his own certainty. I don't personally handle all bookings, Your Honor, Mercer admits. Corporate sometimes arranges events without my direct involvement, so you testified earlier without complete knowledge, Cole interjects smoothly. Objection, the prosecutor calls. Sustained, Whitaker snaps quickly. Mr. Cole, you will not interrogate witnesses without permission. More officials enter, one with a state bar badge, taking front row seats. Whitaker notices, sweat beading despite the air conditioning. He tugs his collar, eyes flicking toward the door as if escape existed. The court will take these documents under advisement, he announces. However, this last-minute evidence appears designed to ambush both the court and the state. With respect, Your Honor, Cole replies. Basic due diligence would have revealed these facts before Ms. Brooks was publicly humiliated. One verification call would have sufficed. Whitaker's gaze cuts to Maya. The defendant should have spoken more clearly about her alleged appointment. Cole's voice hardens. She attempted to explain repeatedly. The transcript you will show you interrupted her. The mood shifts. Spectators glance at one another, recognition passing like a current. The prosecutor shuffles papers, easing away from Whitaker's posture and approach. This court's time is valuable, Whitaker says theatrically. We cannot waste it on protracted debate over a simple trespass. Speaking of time, Cole answers, perhaps explain why minority defendants consistently receive more of your valuable minutes than white defendants with similar charges. How dare you? Whitaker erupts, gavel cracking, fury rattling the room. This is contempt, he roars. One more insinuation and I'll have you removed. I'm asking about a documented anomaly, Cole replies without flinching. Public records show minority defendants average 43 minutes of court time. White defendants average 17 for comparable counts. Clear the courtroom, Whitaker shouts, face mottled with rage. Everyone but essential personnel out. No one moves. The bailiff hesitates, eyes flicking to the official observers. Cole remains composed, the still point in a spinning room. I'd like to call Dr. Naomi Pierce to clarify Miss Brooks's presence at the Grand, Cole says. Before Whitaker can object, Pierce approaches the stand and is sworn in, credentials visible on her lanyard. Dr. Pierce, please explain the program and specifically why Maya Brooks was at the hotel. The National Merit Scholarship Program identifies exceptional students from underrepresented communities, Pierce says. Maya's academic record is extraordinary despite limited resources. She maintains a 4.0 while working and volunteering. Irrelevant character testimony, Whitaker snaps. It speaks to motive, Your Honor, Cole counters. Ms. Brooks had legitimate business at that location, negating trespass. Pierce continues. We hold interviews at the Grand because it provides a professional, neutral environment for candidates from multiple districts. Whitaker leans forward. Why not at a school or public library? Why a luxury hotel? We want our candidates to feel valued, Pierce replies evenly. Many come from neighborhoods where professional settings are scarce. The prosecutor senses the tide shifting. Your Honor, in light of this evidence, the state requests time to investigate. Whitaker ignores him, fixating again on Maya, who sits composed, notebook open. She continues to write, documenting every word. Ms. Brooks, he snaps, enough with your note-taking. Hand over that notebook immediately. Cole stands. Objection. Those notes are attorney-client communications and protected work product. I want to see what she's writing about my courtroom. Whitaker blurts. The admission hangs in the air. Reputation over justice. Maya looks up, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. The room stills, tension stretched taut as wire. Actually, she says, voice clear, I'm happy to explain exactly what I've been documenting, if you're prepared for everyone to hear it. Satisfaction flickers, then fades from Whitaker's face as he registers the confidence in her tone. Proceed, he says carefully, doubt creeping in. Maya rises, notebook in hand, and steps to the center. Gone is the timid teenager from earlier. In her place stands a young woman with purpose in every line. For 7 months, she begins, I've been tracking judicial misconduct across multiple courtrooms for a student research project on equal justice in our county. She opens the notebook, revealing neat charts, timelines, and color-coded entries. What started as a school assignment changed when I saw disturbing patterns. Defendants of color consistently received harsher outcomes than white defendants charged with identical offenses. Dismissal rates for white defendants were 78% higher. Court-appointed attorneys for minority defendants averaged 4.3 minutes to consult before proceedings. Attorneys for white defendants averaged 12.7. Whitaker tries to interrupt. Your Honor, Cole says, you specifically requested Ms. Brooks explain her documentation. Please allow her to finish. Maya continues, voice steady. I tracked 137 cases across 3 county courtrooms, including 42 in this courtroom specifically, all verified against public dockets. Patterns emerged quickly, she says, turning a page. For loitering, white defendants were diverted or warned 62% of the time. Defendants of color received maximum community service in 59% of comparable circumstances. For first-time shoplifting, fines for white teens averaged $75. Black teens averaged $210, with additional hours disproportionately assigned. I cross-checked each entry against official records. The numbers aren't opinions. They are receipts. Whitaker leans back, trying to reassert distance. The court is not a sociology lab, Ms. Brooks. We deal with facts, not feelings. These are facts, Maya answers, tapping a column of tallies. Your courtroom's outcomes deviate significantly from county norms. Hearing lengths skew longer for minority defendants, often with extended lecturing by the bench. That extra time correlates with harsher penalties. That's not neutral discretion, it's a pattern. A murmur ripples. Even the court reporter looks up. Cole steps in. Your Honor, given the credible documentation, the defense renews its motion to dismiss and requests an evidentiary hearing into judicial bias. Denied, Whitaker says reflexively. On what basis? Cole asks. On this is my courtroom grounds? A few muffled chuckles escape before the tension clamps down again. The State Bar Observer looks up. The ethics investigator's tablet keeps recording. Whitaker's jaw works. This court will set a later date, he says. Today, we're finishing sentencing. Before Maya moves, the ethics investigator stands. Your Honor, Agent Carlin Guyen, State Ethics Commission. Please note for the record that an official inquiry is underway regarding alleged discriminatory practices from this bench. We are present as observers. Whitaker stiffens. Your presence does not dictate this court's process. Understood, Nguyen says. It does, however, obligate preservation of evidence, including recordings, transcripts, and exhibits, such as Ms. Brooks's notebook. Will serve formal notices shortly. Cole seizes the opening. Your Honor, in light of the active inquiry, entering a punitive sentence now would be imprudent and prejudicial. A brief recess to review newly presented evidence would protect all parties. The prosecutor nods reluctantly. The state has no objection to a short continuance. Whitaker exhales through his nose, weighing stubbornness against optics. 5 minutes, he snaps. Court will stand in recess. He bangs the gavel. The gallery buzzes. Maya exhales a breath she didn't know she held. During the recess, Cole confers quietly with Maya and Anthony. We'll move to dismiss again, he says. If that fails, we force discovery on court practices. Naomi Pierce joins them, outlining confirmations from hotel corporate. I have written verification, contact names, and a standing memorandum of understanding about the diversity initiative, she says. We'll file copies. Anthony squeezes Maya's shoulder. Proud of you, kid. She nods, gathering courage like warmth under a coat that finally fits. Whitaker returns before the 5 minutes elapse, impatience telegraphed in every stride. Be seated, he orders. On review, the court acknowledges new materials were introduced. Nevertheless, the defendant's conduct merits consequences. Cole rises. Renewed motion to dismiss. Denied. In the alternative, motion to suppress all statements made without counsel's effective assistance. Denied. The prosecutor clears his throat. The state, mindful of the circumstances, is open to voluntary dismissal in the interest of justice. The court sets policy, not the state, Whitaker says, pointedly. He faces Maya again, unwilling to release control. Ms. Brooks, do you still maintain you were at the hotel for an academic program? Yes, Your Honor. Do you have proof other than self-serving notes? Cole lifts the email. Verified by corporate events, he passes duplicates to the clerk. Whitaker skims, expression stony. He sets the paper down with exaggerated care, as though balance might restore authority. The room, however, has shifted. The court requires independent confirmation, Whitaker announces. We've provided it, Cole says, from a neutral corporate office, not defense-created material. A muscle jumps in Whitaker's cheek. The court will place a call itself, he says, lifting his phone again like a talisman. He dials, puts it on speaker. The corporate coordinator answers crisply, confirming the reservation, the hours, the national merit contact, and Maya's scheduled interview time without hesitation. Thank you, Cole says. That's sufficient. Whitaker ends the call, face unreadable. The prosecutor clears his throat. Your Honor, the state moves to dismiss in the interest of justice. Granted, Whitaker says automatically, then stops, catching himself between pride and inevitability. Granted without prejudice, he amends, a voice tight. Cole raises an eyebrow. The defense requests with prejudice. There was never probable cause if legitimate purpose negates trespass. Denied, Whitaker says. The gallery murmurs. The State Bar Observer writes faster, head tilted. Cole doesn't press the point. He pivots. Your Honor, the defense also moves to expunge all references to this arrest and seal associated records immediately to prevent collateral harm. The state has no objection, the prosecutor says quickly, eager to stem the reputational bleed. Whitaker hesitates, then nods. So ordered. Cole continues. We further request the court acknowledge on the record Ms. Brooks's legitimate presence at the hotel for an academic interview. Whitaker stares a fraction too long. The record will reflect the corporate office confirmed an academic event, he says finally. Cole nods. Thank you. One more matter, Your Honor. Defense preserves all objections to the court's conduct toward Ms. Brooks today and requests transcripts be expedited. That's administrative, Whitaker says. It will proceed in due course. The State Bar Observer rises briefly. The bar also requests certified copies. Noted, Whitaker replies, tone flat. He glances toward the ethics investigator, who is still recording. Despite the dismissal, Whitaker's posture suggests unfinished business. Ms. Brooks, he says, you would be wise to temper your attitude in future encounters with the law. Cole steps forward. With respect, Your Honor, Ms. Brooks encountered the law today. It tried to break her. It failed. A flicker of applause rustles before the bailiff barks for order. Whitaker's expression hardens. This proceeding is concluded, he declares. Not quite, Cole replies. Dr. Pierce has a brief statement regarding institutional partnerships. Permission to address the court, Your Honor, Pierce asks. Denied, Whitaker answers, then glances at Agent Nguyen and the bar observer and grudgingly adds, briefly. Pierce faces the room. The program invited Miss Brooks for a finalist interview. She missed that opportunity because she was unlawfully detained and publicly humiliated. We rescheduled immediately. Our review board will consider today's events when evaluating institutional partners, including the Grand's local management. Optics matter because students matter. Anthony stands, voice steady. Your Honor, I request permission to speak as Ms. Brooks's father. Denied, Whitaker says quickly. Cole intercedes. If we're done, the defense requests immediate release of Ms. Brooks, return of property, and escorted exit due to potential media attention. Granted, Whitaker says, clipped. He hammers the gavel. Court is adjourned. People rise, a swell of murmurs. The ethics investigator confers with colleagues. The bar observer approaches the clerk for contact details and transcript timelines. In the hallway, Cole speaks low. There will be follow-through. Complaints, affidavits, requests for audio, perhaps a petition to recuse. Pierce squeezes Maya's arm. Focus on your interview tomorrow. You earned that place, not pity. Anthony nods. We'll be there early. Maya looks at her notebook, edges bent from Whitaker's toss. She smooths the cover and writes a final line. System resisted verification until compelled. Outcome, dismissal, record sealed, bias indicators preserved for review in sunlight. Back in chambers, Whitaker paces, calling Senator Dwyer again. We had observers, he says, strained. Ethics and bar both. I told you to tread carefully, Dwyer sighs. It'll blow over, Whitaker insists. It always does. Not with phones on speakers and corporate confirmations you ignored, Dwyer replies. Lay low. Issue bland statements. Consider sensitivity training optics. I won't pander, Whitaker bristles. Your seat's not guaranteed, Senator says softly. Elections have weather patterns you can't control. Myers, Cole, and Pierce reach the courthouse steps. The sharp-eyed woman from earlier approaches, badge now visible. Agent Nguyen, Ethics Commission, she says. Ms. Brooks, your notes are invaluable. We'll need copies. With your consent. Cole nods. We'll provide scanned records and a declaration. Anthony shakes hands with Nguyen. Appreciate you being there. Nguyen's look is clear. This isn't over. She turns to colleagues, already outlining subpoenas, public records pulls, and data matching protocols. They head toward the parking lot. Reporters hover, sniffing heat. Cole angles his body to shield Maya, speaking to cameras briefly. Charges dismissed. Records sealed. Ongoing review. No further comment. Maya keeps her gaze forward, breathing slow. Her phone buzzes again, from an unknown number. Proud of you. Hold steady. She types back, thank you. Who is this? No reply. Pierce smiles wryly. You're about to learn the uncomfortable generosity of strangers. Sometimes it's real. Sometimes it's branding. Across town, the Grand Hotel's general manager meets corporate by video. The polished table reflects nervous faces. We partner with community programs for goodwill and talent pipelines, corporate says. Local interference undermines the agreement. The manager swallows. Understood. A memo circulates within the hour, reaffirming access protocols for scheduled educational events. Security supervisors sign acknowledgments. A discreet call reaches Colin Mercer. The tone is cordial and unmistakably corrective. That evening, Maya sits at the kitchen table, notebook open beside a chipped mug. Anthony sauté onions and peppers, warmth filling their small apartment. He sets a plate before her. Eat first, scholar later. She smiles, suddenly hungry. They eat quietly until he asks, "You scared?" she thinks. Tired more than scared. Angry, a little. Proud, a little. Ready mostly. Ready for what? To keep writing it down, she says. He nods, eyes bright. That's my girl. Steel wrapped in kindness. Cole emails a draft complaint to Pierce and the bar liaison, attaching exhibits, corporate confirmation, transcript excerpts, Maya's charts. He CCs Agent Nguyen. Subject line, judicial conduct, preliminary evidence packet. In a separate note, he tells Maya, "You were remarkable. Rest. Tomorrow we talk scholarships, not subpoenas." She writes back, "Thank you for standing up. My dad says you have courtroom ice water." Cole smiles at the phrase. He'll take it. Better ice water than smoke and mirrors. Whitaker pours bourbon in his dark study, watching lawn lights burn. He replays the afternoon in shards. The laugh, the gavel, the phone on speaker, the word dismissed, landing like a slap. He tells himself the room was against him. He tells himself decorum frayed because others undermined authority. He does not tell himself about the notebook that unsettled him. He sips, throat hot. The silence presses. Outside, a sprinkler clicks on and off, precise, indifferent, counting seconds he cannot control. Maya sets early alarms. She irons the blouse again, smooths the skirt, packs pens, prints emails, adds a spare copy of the corporate confirmation just in case. Anthony slips bus passes into her bag. Backup for the backup, he grins. She laughs, surprised by the lightness of it. She has room inside again. She places the notebook on the nightstand within reach, the way some people keep a lamp or a glass of water. Habit, yes, but also a quiet promise to tomorrow's clarity. Before sleep, she flips to a fresh page and writes headings: date, location, judge, charge, outcome, notes, variables. She adds today's entries with clean lines. Then she turns to a blank section titled Project Plan, compile anonymized summaries, seek independent statistician, request audio archives per courtroom, design visualization, prepare report for county council, consider op-ed for the local paper, coordinate with ethics commission timelines. She closes the notebook and exhales, steady as a drumbeat. Anthony washes the last dish and leans on the counter. "When your mom got sick," he says softly, "you started writing to make sense of the chaos. I couldn't fix much, but I could buy you notebooks." She touches his arm. "You did fix something," she says. "You taught me to stand straight, even when my knees shake." He blinks hard. "Then stand straight tomorrow, scholar. Speak clearly. Look them in the eye." They smile at the familiar refrain, burnished by love and necessity. Morning comes, with a pale line of peach on the horizon. Maya and Anthony ride a quiet bus downtown, city waking around them. At the Grand, a different security supervisor greets them warmly, checks the list, and personally escorts them to the Oakwood room. Floors gleam. Water pitchers sparkle. A banner reads, "National Merit Scholarship Interviews." Maya's shoulders loosen. Dr. Pierce waves from across the room, relief bright. "You made it." Maya grins. This time the door opens without argument. The interview panel asks precise questions: academic interests, community work, a challenge you've overcome. Maya speaks plainly about library volunteer shifts, tutoring younger students, rebuilding confidence after yesterday's ordeal. She does not mention Whitaker by name. She doesn't need to. The panel understands subtext. Pierce watches from the back, hands clasped. Afterward, a panelist says, "You think like a researcher and speak like a teacher. The combination's rare." Maya feels the words land like sunlight. Outside the conference room, Pierce hugs her. "Whatever happens, you handled yourself beautifully." Anthony snaps a quick photo beneath the banner, his daughter's smile finally unguarded. Texts ping. Neighbors, classmates, a librarian who kept a shelf of college guides just for her. Cole sends 3 words, "Proud of you." Agent Nguyen adds, "Keep your originals safe." Maya tucks the notebook deeper in her bag. She still feels the courtroom's chill, but it no longer owns the day's center. That afternoon, back at school, her civics teacher asks if she'll share a few thoughts with the class next week about observing courts. No names, just process and rights. Maya agrees. She'll bring anonymized charts. She'll talk about verification, patience, and how to breathe when the air feels thin. She'll say systems bend when enough weight is logged and lifted together. After practice, she walks home with friends who ask careful questions, then tell ridiculous jokes until the world tilts easier. 2 days later, Maya sits at the same kitchen table and drafts a summary for her project mentor. For 7 months, she writes, I tracked 137 cases across 3 county courtrooms, including 42 in Judge Whitaker's courtroom specifically. Data includes sentencing variances, consultation times, and diversion rates, broken down by charge and defendant demographics. Preliminary visuals highlight systematic disparities. Attached spreadsheets, methodology notes, anonymized excerpts. The last line is simple. Facts preserved demand daylight. The figures show systemic gaps that can't be chalked up to case differences alone. Maya flips a page. Judge Whitaker, in your courtroom specifically, Black defendants receive sentences averaging 67% longer than white defendants on the same charges. You interrupt Black defendants roughly 7.2 times per hearing, compared with 1.3 for white defendants. A low wave of whispers rolls through the gallery. Pens pause. Even the reporter's fingers hover above the keys, as if the numbers themselves have entered the record. Whitaker hammers the gavel without effect. Preposterous. Juvenile ramblings from a child who doesn't understand the law. Dr. Naomi Pierce stands. Maya Brooks isn't just any student, Your Honor. She's the youngest recipient of last year's State Youth Leadership Award, presented by Governor Lawson. Her research on court disparities has been selected for national presentation at the Civic Rights Foundation Youth Summit. Pierce steps to the rail, folder in hand. Her calm, professional cadence cuts through Whitaker's mounting bluster. Her appointment at the Grand served 2 purposes, Pierce explains. First, a scholarship interview. Second, a scheduled conversation with the hotel's corporate counsel about community initiatives she's evaluating as potential models for judicial reform. A woman from the back row steps forward, badge visible. Director Elena Vargas, State Judicial Ethics Committee. Judge Whitaker, we've monitored your courtroom following multiple formal complaints about disparate treatment. Vargas gestures to colleagues fanning along the wall. Their arrival feels less like a surprise than inevitability. Our committee reviewed Ms. Brooks's preliminary work and found it consistent with our own inquiries, Vargas continues. Her statistical method is remarkably rigorous for someone her age. Whitaker's complexion drains. This is an ambush, a staged attack. No, Your Honor, Vargas replies evenly. This is oversight. Ms. Brooks acted independently. Her notes simply corroborate patterns already under investigation. Whitaker grasps for footing. None of this changes the alleged trespass at the Grand. Avery Cole steps up with a tablet, face composed and steady. Security footage from the Grand, Your Honor, Cole says. It shows Ms. Brooks escorted by hotel staff to the Oakwood conference room exactly as she described. He plays the clip. On screen, Maya presents ID at the front desk. A uniformed employee guides her toward the elevators. The timestamp matches the supposed incident to the minute. The gallery leans in. Even the bailiff watches. Cole lowers the tablet. The allegation was false. Ms. Brooks had permission, a legitimate purpose, and remained within an authorized area. Director Vargas addresses the courtroom. The Ethics Committee has been compiling evidence on Judge Whitaker for months. We needed clear documentation of his conduct with multiple witnesses present. Today provided it. Whitaker scans the room and finally understands the circle closing around him. State officials lining the wall, reporters transcribing every syllable, respected attorneys observing, impassive. This is a witch hunt, he sputters. I've served 2 decades on this bench. Exactly, Vargas answers. 2 decades of patterns that demand sunlight. Vargas opens a folder stamped with the state seal. Judge William Whitaker, by authority of the State Judicial Ethics Committee and the State Supreme Court, you are hereby suspended from the bench effective immediately, pending a full investigation into judicial misconduct, abuse of power, and systemic discrimination in your courtroom. The gavel slips from Whitaker's hand, striking the bench with a flat, stunned clack. No one breathes. In the silence, the shape of accountability becomes suddenly, sharply real. Hours later, the courthouse hums like a hive. In the main courtroom, Chief Judge Eleanor Michaels convenes an emergency hearing on Maya's case. Her demeanor is everything Whitaker's was not: measured, attentive, precise. After reviewing the record, Judge Michaels says, "This court dismisses all charges against Ms. Brooks with prejudice. The file will reflect that these charges lacked merit and were improperly pursued." She looks directly at Maya. "On behalf of this court, I apologize for the treatment you endured today." In the gallery, hotel owner Colin Mercer shifts uncomfortably. Afterward, he approaches Maya and Anthony. "Ms. Brooks, I owe you a personal apology," he says, hand extended. "I spoke without full information and contributed to an injustice. Having learned about your research, I'd like to offer you an internship within our corporate social responsibility office. Your perspective would be invaluable." Anthony studies Mercer's face for sincerity. Maya nods once, not a capitulation, but a measured acceptance of responsibility offered. Across town, at the Ethics Committee headquarters, Director Vargas and her team begin the heavy lift, pulling decades of digital dockets and paper files. "The pattern is even clearer than we suspected," Vargas tells her deputy, scrolling through a heat map of outcomes. Minority defendants received sentences averaging 60% longer than white defendants for identical charges. First-time white offenders got probation at 7 times the rate of minority counterparts. The numbers draw their own grim picture, pixel by pixel. A junior analyst rushes in with a fresh report. "Director, we've identified 23 cases with particularly egregious disparities. 3 defendants remain incarcerated, where similarly situated white defendants received probation." Vargas nods. "Flag those now. Notify the public defender." "We'll file motions for reconsideration immediately." Outside, cameras gather like weather. Headlines arrive on cue. Teen turns tables on biased judge. Student researcher exposes courthouse disparity. By evening, deeper coverage emerges from the State Tribune, its analysis sober and unflinching. Professor Lila Montgomery, a judicial ethics scholar, appears in primetime panels. "What happened today is both failure and success," she says. Failure, because a judge operated with bias for years. Success, because a young woman's diligence, combined with proper oversight, finally produced accountability. Back at Maya's apartment, the kettle whistles over the low hum of late-night news. She watches coverage that alternates between sensational sizzle and meticulous breakdowns of data the public rarely sees, but always lives with. The next morning, Maya stands again behind microphones, flanked by Dr. Pierce. "My work isn't about targeting a single individual," she says carefully. "It's about documenting patterns that shape real lives every day. One biased judge affects thousands of families over a career. Her dataset and the committee's findings generate momentum for legislation. State Senator Adrian Park announces the Judicial Accountability Act for introduction next week. Maya receives an invitation to speak at the bill's press event. Senator Park tells reporters, "Ms. Brooks's meticulous documentation supplied the evidence we needed. The proposal establishes independent review of sentencing patterns, mandatory bias training, and a more transparent judicial appointment process." At the Grand's corporate headquarters, executives conduct an internal review of the communication breakdown. They discover Mercer's executive assistant, Gregory Pike, intentionally failed to relay confirmations for educational programs. "I didn't think those belonged here," Pike admits. Termination is immediate, and policy memos follow. Company-wide directives reaffirm the hotel's inclusion initiatives and non-discrimination policies. Whitaker, now behind drawn curtains at his Cedar Ridge mansion, hires Julian Crane, a crisis-tested attorney known for representing toppled officials. Judge Whitaker's remarks have been mischaracterized, Crane tells reporters from the driveway. His distinguished service speaks for itself. We're confident a fair review will clear him. The gambit backfires when the committee releases transcripts from multiple hearings, condescension and bias rendered in cold, unflinching text. Political allies begin stepping back, statements softening from firm support to cautious wait and see. Governor Lawson addresses the matter at a scheduled press conference. The integrity of our courts depends on fairness from every bench, she says. We take these allegations seriously. We'll follow the investigation and act appropriately. Behind closed doors, the governor's council explores removal options if the findings hold and compiles a short list of replacements whose records reflect commitments to equal justice. The state bar announces its own inquiry into potential ethics violations. Judicial misconduct of this nature, if confirmed, constitutes a profound breach of professional duty, the statement reads. Former defendants from Whitaker's court begin sharing stories. Community legal aid groups open a hotline. Within days, more than 200 calls flood in. Marshall and Reed pledges pro bono representation for the most egregious appeals. Equal justice isn't a slogan, Cole tells the press. It's a constitutional guarantee that requires teeth. Monday, Maya returns to school. Attempting ordinary in the wake of extraordinary. Hallways carry a new quiet, admiration threaded with curiosity. Her history teacher asks her to speak about civic engagement in the courts. Sometimes change begins with paying close attention, she tells classmates. Write down what you see. Speak when the silence harms. A week later, a forensic audit of Whitaker's communications uncovers something heavier. Emails coordinating with select prosecutors to target certain defendants from so-called problem neighborhoods. The Ethics Committee forwards those communications to the Attorney General, shifting the matter from professional misconduct to potential criminal conspiracy. The State Judicial Center's largest hearing room fills an hour before proceedings. Cameras blink red like mechanical heartbeats along the back wall. Security checks credentials at every door. Whitaker enters by a side hall, suit hanging looser, face drawn. Julian Crane leans in, whispering advice measured in inches in survival. The once imperious stride is gone. He sits at the respondent's table, eyes down, hands folded. The irony is thick enough to taste, the judge now seated where defendants trembled. A 5-member review panel files in, led by Justice Rebecca Chen of the State Supreme Court. These proceedings, she announces, will determine whether Judge Whitaker violated the judicial code and state constitution. This is not a criminal trial, but it evaluates fitness to remain on the bench and whether referral is warranted. Director Vargas presents first. Evidence arrives in a steady, devastating cadence, statistical analyses of sentencing patterns, testimony from former defendants, transcripts capturing disparate treatment, private communications pulling back the curtain. On the screen, an email highlights Whitaker urging ADA Mark Fuller to pursue maximum penalties for people from problem neighborhoods while recommending diversion for kids from good areas. The euphemisms fall away. Intent is legible. The room's oxygen thins beneath the weight of printouts. Whitaker's former clerk, Alexis Rodriguez, testifies about calendar manipulation. He wanted certain prosecutors matched to minority defendant cases, she explains. He called it putting the right lawyer on the right file. Everyone knew what that meant. As testimony piles up, the defense narrative phrase, allies peel off. Colin Mercer, once slated as a character witness, provides a sworn statement instead. During golf rounds, Whitaker mocked keeping undesirables out of upscale spaces. Mercer calls his past silence a regret he'll carry. Ada Fuller takes the stand, a voice tight. There was an unspoken understanding, he says. If you didn't seek what the judge wanted, your docket got worse. Young prosecutors learned quickly which cases were career boosters. As day 2 closes, Whitaker requests to speak. Justice Chen allows it, perhaps anticipating contrition. He approaches slowly, performing humility. He cites 20 years of service, regrets misunderstandings, pledges respect, until questions sharpen. The veneer splits like brittle varnish under heat. You don't understand the realities of keeping order, he snaps when pressed on the emails. Someone has to make hard calls to keep communities safe. And those hard calls tilted against minority defendants, Justice Chen asks evenly. Whitaker's restraint ruptures. Look at the numbers. Look where crime comes from. Some people only understand consequences. I gave them what was needed. I won't apologize for it. Gasps ripple. Cameras tighten. The mask has finally fallen. The subtext speaks aloud. Court reporters race across keys, catching every word as it sprints from excuse to confession. Clips spread online in minutes. The plainness of prejudice needs no caption. The panel deliberates less than 2 hours before returning. Faces set. This panel finds that Judge William Whitaker egregiously violated the judicial code through demonstrated bias, abuse of power, and conduct undermining public trust, Justice Chin reads. We recommend permanent removal and referral to the bar for disbarment proceedings. Additionally, Justice Chin continues, we refer these findings to the Attorney General for potential civil rights charges under state and federal law. Whitaker sits motionless, absorbing the collapse of 2 decades in a handful of days. When he shuffles out, defeated, he stops short. Maya stands in the hallway, cameras catching the moment his eyes meet the young woman whose persistence helped topple a throne. He looks away first. The lens holds steady. 6 months unspool. Headlines fade into implementation. The Whitaker case becomes less scandal than catalyst. At the statewide judicial conference, Chief Justice Renee Monroe addresses a packed auditorium. The integrity of our courts rests on equal application, not just elegant statutes, she says. The audit launched after Whitaker identified 5 other judges with similar patterns. 2 resigned before hearings. 3 contest the findings, their dockets reassigned. The reform's shape is broad, not cosmetic. At a state bar panel, Director Vargas clarifies the purpose. This isn't about punishing individuals for sport, she says. It's about mending a system that lost public trust. Every biased ruling injures belief in justice itself. New rules roll out. Annual implicit bias training becomes mandatory. Sentencing data publishes quarterly, searchable by charge and demographics. A citizen review panel adds community perspectives to judicial appointments. The shift is incremental and structural at once. The grand transforms along a parallel line. Corporate requires comprehensive inclusion training for staff and vendors. More significantly, they fund the Future Leaders Scholarship for youths pursuing hospitality and business leadership. We're honored that Ms. Brooks will serve as student advisor to our scholarship board, announces the new diversity officer during the launch. Her insight shaped criteria that actually serve local needs. Maya nods, wary but hopeful, her fingerprints visible on a program built for permanence. Maya's research expands with a grant from the State University's Criminal Justice Department. She presents at the National Conference on Court Reform, where her methodology is adopted as a community oversight model. What makes her approach effective, explains Professor James Richardson, is quantifying behaviors dismissed as just impressions. When you show a judge interrupts minority defendants 4 times as often as white defendants, denial becomes difficult. Numbers dull excuses, patterns demand answers. The legislature passes the Judicial Accountability Act with rare bipartisan votes. Governor Lawson signs the bill while Maya stands among advocates and jurists. Key provisions include mandatory recording of all proceedings, transparent sentencing guidelines, and independent review for misconduct complaints. This ensures what happened in Whitaker's courtroom doesn't repeat, the governor says. Equal justice isn't a motto on marble. It's work we owe each other. Cameras flash. Pens scratch. A promise enters statute. Former defendants feel change in real time. A special panel re-examines more than 300 cases, overturning convictions and reducing sentences where bias warped outcomes. A class action against the county yields a relief fund for those the system derailed. I lost 3 years for what a white kid got probation for, says Marcus Turner, newly released. I can't get time back, but at least people finally believe what we've said because someone measured it. Law schools update ethics curricula to include the Whitaker case. Bar exams add questions on judicial bias and attorneys' duty to report misconduct. As graduation nears, Maya opens a letter sealed with the presidential crest, an invitation to join a special White House commission on criminal justice reform. 1 year after that first day in Whitaker's courtroom, she stands at a podium in Courtroom 3, now renamed the Equal Justice Chamber, the air bright with more than ceremony. Sunlight spills across oak panels as a diverse crowd gathers for Judge Amara Patterson's investiture. When I entered a courtroom last year, Maya says, I couldn't imagine standing here. I just wanted to document what I saw, to prove disparities weren't anecdotes, but measurable realities with human costs. Judge Patterson, a former public defender known for even-handedness, smiles from near the bench she'll soon take, rebuilt slightly lower, angled toward the gallery rather than looming above it. Justice doesn't belong to robes and titles, Maya continues. It belongs to people. When it fails any one of us, it fails us all. Dr. Pierce follows, announcing an expansion within the National Merit Scholarship Program, a track for students committed to legal and judicial reform. Our first cohort draws from many backgrounds, unified by purpose, she says. 20 students rise, faces mirroring the community. Pins at their collars show scales of justice, not perfectly level, but rebalancing. The courthouse looks familiar and new. Hallways display multilingual guides to rights and resources. Community liaisons in bright vests help visitors navigate. A lobby monitor cycles quarterly sentencing dashboards, open to all. The building didn't change, Anthony observes to Maya, as they walk past the clerk's office, but everything inside it did. Whitaker vanishes from public view. His disbarment finalizes after he declines to contest. Civil settlements drain assets. Former enablers retrain or step aside. A DA Fuller now consults with the Ethics Committee, helping identify patterns elsewhere. I was complicit through my silence, he tells a group of new prosecutors. That's a weight I carry. Anthony finds his own lane, founding a support network for parents whose children face court. You shouldn't need a law degree to survive a hearing, he tells a nervous circle at the community center. Information is armor. In court, armor matters. Heads nod, pens move. Fear loosens by inches. Maya stands at a crossroads, crowded with possibility. Acceptance letters from top universities tile the kitchen table, full scholarships attached. She commits to study law with a focus on judicial ethics and reform. The original notebook, frayed corners, colored tabs, has been requested by the State Historical Society's Civil Rights Archive. Before leaving for campus, she visits the classroom where her project began to speak with students seated where she once sat, asking the same impossible necessary questions. I didn't set out to topple a judge or lead a movement, she tells them. I wrote down what I saw. Consistently and carefully, I stood firm when retreat felt easier. She lifts a new notebook, twin to the first. This is still my strongest tool, not for what's inside, but for what it represents, a commitment to unvarnished truth. Pens lift, eyes brighten, the bell rings, but no one moves until the silence finishes speaking. 2 weeks later, Maya records an address that soon appears in courthouses statewide. Justice isn't automatic. It requires vigilance, courage, and the resolve to hold the line when power buckles. Across town, a digital banner promotes a documentary about the case. The credit roll lists not only lawyers and officials, but librarians, clerks, and student volunteers who filed public records requests and double-checked every cell. The work was collective. The spark, however, began with a notebook and a refusal to look away. Meanwhile, the Grand refines its outreach. Security supervisors attend quarterly refreshers on community partnerships. Access protocols live in laminated cards at each station. The scholarship board meets monthly. Maya insists on mentorship guarantees, not just checks. We're building ladders, not photo ops, she says. The diversity officer nods. Corporate listens. Mistakes will happen, but now they'll meet a protocol that centers dignity. The lobby hosts a student exhibit titled Data with Faces. Tourists linger. Whitaker spends his days behind a gated hedgerow, pressed thinning to the occasional long lens. Statements shift from defiance to silence. Julian Crane quietly closes the file. In a dim study, Whitaker replays old hearings in his mind, lectures delivered, futures shaped by his voice. Anger yields to a colder feeling without a name. His phone buzzes with an email from the bar. Disbarment finalized. He stares at the word as if it belonged to someone else. In Maya's world, life contracts and expands. She attends pre-law seminars, shadowing public defenders on arraignment mornings, learning the rhythm of whispered consultations and hurried continuances. She meets a statistician who volunteers to pressure test her models. They argue amiably over assumptions and p-values, sharpening each other's work. At night, she answers messages from strangers who read her report and recognize their own stories inside the columns, numbers that carried their names without printing them. On campus, a student newsroom assigns a team to cover the rollout of the Accountability Act. Editors publish explainers on how to read sentencing dashboards, how to file complaints, how to request transcripts. Maya contributes a guest column. Data is only as good as the questions we ask and the courage we keep when answers hurt. The piece is clipped to dorm doors and posted in 100 group chats, traveling faster than lectures, sticking longer than slogans. The review panel reconvenes to audit other benches. Some judges bristle, then adjust. Others welcome the mirror. Community forums grow crowded but less rancorous, trading heat for homework. At one event, Anthony watches his daughter field questions from a retired judge who once dismissed data as feelings. Tonight he listens, scribbling notes. Afterward, he shakes Maya's hand and says, "Thank you." The word lands like a small door opening somewhere the public doesn't usually see. In a seminar, Dr. Pierce invites Maya to co-teach a unit on courtroom observation. The syllabus includes not just statutes and case law, but practical skills, how to track interruptions, measure consultation time, and code outcomes without bias. Students practice in pairs, comparing notes until discrepancies narrow. On the last day, Pierce says, accuracy is an ethics issue. We don't just count, we care that our counting tells the truth. Heads nod, the work feels both granular and grand. Months later, Justice Chen visits campus to deliver a lecture on judicial responsibility. During Q&A, a student asks what finally moved the needle in Whitaker's case. The confluence of data and narrative, Chen answers. Evidence that could be seen and felt. A number you can verify, and a moment you can't forget. Like a teenager told to spin in a courtroom. That combination changes minds because it changes what people can deny. The room holds that sentence carefully. At a community center, Anthony's parents' group keeps meeting on Wednesday nights. They role-play arraignments, swap resources, and demystify acronyms. One evening, a mother brings a casserole and a story about her son's case being reconsidered. They clap. A few cry. After the meeting, Anthony walks home under streetlights and thinks about the distance traveled from a gavel's crack to a room of folding chairs where fear loosens because knowledge exists. The State Tribune runs a follow-up. Audit Year 1. Charts show declines in sentencing disparities across several courts, though not all. Progress, imperfect and visible. An editorial cautions against fatigue. The arc doesn't bend without hands. Maya tapes the page above her desk, beside a photo from Judge Patterson's investiture. In the picture, sunlight makes the new bench glow like warm stone. Change, she thinks, looks less like thunder and more like steady weather. Later, Marshall and Reed hosts a pro bono summit. Cole panels a session on evidence collection in bias cases, inviting librarians and open records advocates onto the stage. Credit belongs to the back office too, he says. An older attorney asks Maya what she wants from the law. She answers without hesitation. A system where diligence matters more than ZIP codes. The room hums with approval, not because it's easy, but because the answer names a measurable horizon. On a quiet afternoon, Maya visits the Civil Rights Archive to deliver her original notebook. A curator in cotton gloves turns pages like relics. They photograph the bent wire coil, the ink smudges, the coffee ring from a night she barely remembers. People will study this, the curator says, and remember that accountability began with observation. Maya signs the accession form, watches the box close, and feels both loss and relief as the lid meets the edge with a soft click. She walks to the library and checks out 3 books, one on administrative law, one on community-based research, one on design thinking for public systems. On the steps outside, she runs into Agent Nguyen. Still counting? Maya asks with a grin. Always, Nguyen answers. They trade updates, subpoenas issued, training scheduled, stubborn courts nudged forward. Before leaving, Nguyen adds, keep your copies safe. The original is history. The work is present tense. Maya nods, understood. At home, Anthony cooks red beans and rice, the apartment filling with steam and laughter. They eat while a radio segment replays Professor Montgomery's interview. The metrics make denial expensive, the professor says. We've attached costs to bias, reversed cases, retraining, elections. Systems respond to incentives, even ethical ones. Anthony raises his fork in a toast. To incentives, he jokes. To incentives with a conscience, Maya answers, clinking her glass. The second quarterly dashboard posts. Local reporters note narrower gaps in average sentencing lengths and fewer interruption disparities in several courtrooms. Not victory, direction. Maya drafts a thread explaining what the numbers do and don't prove. Beware the single chart, she writes. Look for persistence across time, controls for charge severity, and whether reforms hold under pressure. The post spreads beyond law Twitter into school boards and neighborhood groups, civic homework assigned and remarkably done. The governor's office releases guidance for implementing the Accountability Act, templates for community panels, protocols for preserving recordings, standards for publishing data. A quiet bureaucratic triumph. Forms that help justice instead of hiding it. Maya bookmarks the PDFs the way some people save recipes. Cole emails, want to help draft us citizen's guide. She replies in minutes, yes, plain language. Lots of examples, checklists people can actually use. They set a deadline and start writing. The guide launches online with illustrations and step-by-step pages. Librarians print copies for public kiosks. Community centers host walkthrough nights. A teen shows Maya his annotated version, margins full of questions. She answers each one, patient as a tutor at a library table. Afterward, he says, I thought courts were places things happened to you. Now I know some things can happen because of you. The line lodges like a seed in a good season. A year after Whitaker's removal, a coalition hosts a town hall screening of the documentary, followed by a panel featuring Maya, Cole, Director Vargas, and Judge Patterson. In the Q&A, someone asks what kept them going when backlash spiked. Cole, habits. Vargas, partners. Patterson, procedure. Maya, notebooks, and people who believed the entries would matter. When the lights come up, the room doesn't empty quickly. Clusters form, trading emails and next steps like neighbors after a storm. Back in the equal justice chamber, the bench's lower angle continues to change the room's geometry. Defendants look less like supplicants, more like participants. Court liaisons usher families to quiet corners for explanations in plain language. The reporter still types, but now pauses to link outcomes with posted dashboards. Outside, a plaque reads, sunlight is not spectacle. It is maintenance. People stop to read it, then push the door and go in anyway, choosing process over theater. At the university, Maya joins a clinic that audits diversion programs for equity. They discover waitlists are longer in certain ZIP codes due to underfunded providers. The clinic publishes a memo. The county reallocates grants. It's not headline worthy, but a dozen teenagers enter programs months sooner. One emails. My little sister says thanks for getting me home earlier. Maya stares at the line until it blurs. Policy looks abstract until someone names you in the outcome. Cole mentors a new cohort of law students at the firm's Summer Institute. He teaches them to build timelines like bridges, load-bearing, redundant, beautiful, only because they hold. He invites Maya to guest teach a section on statistical storytelling, how to place numbers where hearts can reach them. After class, a student asks, what if the data says what people don't want to hear? Then we make it harder to ignore, Maya answers. Truth deserves a microphone and a graph. Director Vargas publishes the Ethics Committee's annual report. Complaints increase, less a sign of chaos than of trust that complaints matter. Discipline becomes swifter, more transparent. Appeals aren't afterthoughts. They are expected components of accountability. Op-eds complain of overcorrection. Others warn reforms could stall. Vargas writes, we are not balancing on a knife's edge. We are building a road. The sentence is clipped online and taped to office doors. Metaphor becomes direction. One evening, Maya and Anthony revisit the courthouse steps where they once stood trembling and angry. The limestone looks unchanged. The feeling is new. A father and daughter exit behind them, speaking softly with a liaison in blue. Maya smiles at the small scene. Evidence as ordinary as breath. Anthony squeezes her shoulder. We brought lunch pail patience to a marble building, he says. She laughs. And a stubborn notebook. In a final high school assembly before she leaves for college, Maya addresses a packed auditorium. I didn't topple a system, she says. I kept a record. Then I found people who knew what to do with it. She holds up a fresh notebook. This is permission to notice, to count, to ask for receipts. The principal announces a new student court watch program launching in the fall, built from Maya's template. Dozens sign up before the bell rings. The courthouse hosts an exhibit, before and after, courtrooms in transition. Panels show redesigned benches, liaison stations, translated rights sheets. A video loop plays judge trainings and community panels, not glossy but real. In a quiet corner, a copy of Maya's methodology guide sits on a lectern, pages dog-eared by strangers. A small placard reads, "Start where you stand. Count what you can. Share what you find." The room is rarely empty. Anthony's parents' group spins off a hotline staffed by volunteers who explain forms and deadlines. They track outcomes, learning where bottlenecks hide. County officials start calling them before policy drafts. The shift is subtle, consultation as reflex, not concession. One night, Anthony closes the center and finds a thank you note taped to the door. A drawing of a staircase with the words, "You built this." He texts Maya a photo. She texts back a heart and a ladder emoji. On move-in day, Maya tucks the replacement notebook into a dorm drawer and sets a printed dashboard on the corkboard. Her roommate asks about the chart. "It's a promise," Maya says. "That we'll keep watching." Classes begin. She finds the law library's corner table where light pools in late afternoon. She opens the notebook to a clean page and writes the first line, "Observation is care." The second, "Care scales when measured." The third, "Keep going." Months later, she returns home for a weekend and finds the kitchen table cleared, except for stamped envelopes, scholarship checks from the hotel program, letters from the White House Commission, a note from the Historical Society confirming the exhibit schedule. Anthony pours coffee. "So, counselor," he teases. "Not yet," she smiles. "But I'm on my way." They sit, the quiet full. Outside, a siren wails and fades. Inside, the kettle clicks off. Ordinary sounds earned. In a closing address recorded for the Coalition's channel, Maya looks straight into the lens. "Justice isn't automatic," she says. "It's sustained attention, shared work, and the stubborn refusal to accept patterns that hurt people." If this story moved you, stick around. Support the groups doing the counting. Share the guides. Bring a notebook to your courthouse, not for spectacle, for maintenance. The comments fill with plans, not just praise. That's the point. The post ends with a nudge that avoids hype. If you want more stories about accountability that lead to action, follow the Coalition's channel and turn on alerts. We publish weekly case studies, wins, stumbles, lessons, so communities can adapt faster. Add your voice in the comments, share the tools with someone who needs them. The screen fades to a still image of the Equal Justice Chamber, bench and gallery at eye level, sunlight leveling the room. Lesson 1. A simple notebook can change the weather. If you've lived long enough to see fashion circle back and headlines repeat themselves, you know this: memory is the first battlefield. In Judge William Whitaker's courtroom, a 19-year-old named Maya Brooks refused to trust memory alone. While the gavel barked and the gallery snickered, she held tight to a spiral notebook, pages filled with dates, names, quotes, and tallies she'd gathered over 7 months. Many of you kept ledgers for family budgets, mileage logs for road trips, recipe cards yellowed at the corners. You understand the power of writing things down. Maya did the same, and it turned outrage into evidence. When Whitaker demanded she remember her place, Maya's notes remembered something else: the pattern. Longer hearings for defendants of color, harsher fines for the same charges, More interruptions, less patience, and most damning, a refusal to verify simple facts, like a scholarship interview booked at the Grand Hotel. In America, we like to tell ourselves that truth comes out in the wash. It doesn't, unless someone measures the soap and the water and records the stains before and after. Maya's notebook made denial expensive. Once the National Merit Director in a corporate events office confirmed her appointment, the wind shifted by degrees you could feel, like a storm front crossing your porch in 5 steady minutes. Older readers know how this works. We watched the civil rights era produce clipboards and court exhibits, not just slogans. We learned that a careful logbook can move institutions an inch at a time, and those inches add up to miles. Maya's notes did that. They turned a judge's temper into a data point. They turned humiliation into a public record. And when the Ethics Commission walked in with tablets recording every word, that humble notebook, creased cover, bent wire, became the most dangerous object in the room. Lesson 2: Courage matters, but allies carry the load. Most of us were raised to stand up straight, speak clearly, and look folks in the eye. Good advice that can feel mighty thin when power leans on your neck. Courage got Maya to the center of that courtroom. Community got her out whole. Notice who appeared when the air grew thin. Dr. Naomi Pierce, who knew the hotel booking by heart. Attorney Avery Cole, who slid into the well with velvet over steel. Agent Carla Nguyen from the State Ethics Commission. Even the prosecutor, who felt the tide and stopped rowing against the truth. And do not overlook Anthony Brooks, the father in a pressed maintenance uniform who missed paid hours to stand with his daughter. If you've ever organized a casserole train after a surgery, taken a neighbor to chemo, or walked a grandchild's teacher through a thorny school form, you know the shape of what happened here. People brought their portion of strength. The hotel's corporate office contributed a clean letterhead and a voice on speaker. The bar observer brought watchful silence. The ethics team brought sunlight and chain of custody. None of it was flashy. All of it was necessary. Whitaker tried the old playbook. Bluster, speed, and isolation. That works when a defendant stands alone. It fails when a room full of adults insists on verification. For those of us over 65, this lesson rings familiar. We've seen towns rebuild after floods because people linked arms across property lines. We've seen church basements turn into command centers. Maya's courage lit the signal. The Allies turned up with sandbags. Justice in the American key is a choir song. A solo can start it, but the harmony is what carries to the back row. Lesson 3: Reform isn't a firework. Its maintenance grand gestures make headlines. Maintenance makes history. After the charges were dismissed and records sealed, the story did not end. It downshifted into the kind of work older Americans recognize: forms, audits, trainings, dashboards, and the steady tick-tick of deadlines met. A new judge took the bench with a different posture, literally. The bench sat a few inches lower, angled toward the gallery. A small architectural confession that dignity flows both ways. Proceedings were recorded as a matter of course, not as a favor. Sentencing data posted quarterly, plain as a weather report. So any citizen could check whether the temperature of justice was the same in every ZIP code. The legislature moved too. An accountability act with boring, beautiful provisions. Independent review of patterns, mandatory bias training, rules for preserving audio, and citizen guides written in plain English. If you've ever replaced a furnace filter on schedule or kept a car running past 200,000 miles, you know how unglamorous care sustains a system. Even the Grand Hotel read its moment, access protocols in writing, security retrained, a scholarship that came with mentors, not just checks. Some called it optics. We older folks have another word for it: responsibility. And of course, not everyone applauded. Some argued it was all a witch hunt. Others feared overcorrection. But the dashboards kept posting. Appeals were heard. A special panel re-examined old cases. Progress showed up, less like a parade and more like a Monday. That is the quiet victory of grown-up reform. It doesn't ask for fireworks, it asks for clipboards, calendars, and people who will keep coming back even when cameras leave. So, what do we hand our grandchildren? We hand them Maya's simple rules: observe, record, verify, share, and the muscle memory to keep at it. We tell them justice in this country isn't a marble statue, it's a machine that runs only when citizens oil the gears. If you're 65 or 85, you still own a wrench. Maybe it's a phone that records clean audio. Maybe it's a lifetime of knowing who to call at City Hall. Maybe it's the patience to read a chart and ask the one question no one wants to answer. In the end, the most American line in Maya's story wasn't shouted, it was written small. Outcome: dismissal, record sealed, bias indicators, preserved for review and sunlight. That's not spectacle, that's maintenance. And maintenance is how we hand off a country in better working order than we found it. If Maya's notebook taught us anything, it's that ordinary people can move the needle when we pay attention. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever kept records of a neighborhood issue, a school problem, or a city meeting that helped you push for fairness? What advice would you give younger folks about speaking up without burning out? Share your story in the comments, and if this conversation felt useful, please tap like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you won't miss our weekly practical guides to making justice work where you live.